I have just finished A Parade of Horribles by Matt Dinniman, the 8th book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. This book is all about the inevitability of death and all the different characters trying to come to terms with that in their own way. And for a lot of them, they decide that they would rather die fighting side by side with their friends. Obviously, they do not want to die, and they're trying everything they possibly can to avoid it and to get as many people as they can to safety. But there is always this sense that death is coming for them all. So for most of this book, the level of the game that we're at was based on a racing video game, which I know was meant to remind you of Mario Kart, but the racing game that I'm most familiar with was Lego Racers, so it brought back lots of memories of that. But that's not the part of the book which I find the most exciting. I wanted the information of the mystery about the rest of the universe and what had been happening with the primal race, the residuals, the AI, and we didn't get that until the very end. And oh my goodness, I am overwhelmed with information, and the myths that the Dungeon Crawler game is based on turns actually to be more real than we thought, and it's just history repeating itself, which reminded me a bit of Battlestar Galactica. It has all happened before and will all happen again. And get you, Matt Dinniman, doing interludes like Brandon Sanderson. And there were so many references in this book to Gilmore Girls, Gossip Girl, and I did a whole separate video on the reference to Joe Abercrombie's character Logan Ninefingers, which the AI quoted, so that crossover was really fun. Joe Abercrombie being another fantasy author, and the ominous reminder at the end in that interlude with the historian that this story is a tragedy. So in this level of the game, the humans were being whittled down by these feats in the races, and the surviving human population that had gone into the dungeon in the first place has been absolutely annihilated to this tiny, tiny number. And Carl and Princess Donut were just trying to save as many people as possible. They were trying to get people to take deals, or to go into stasis, or to try to get them to escape to this pineapple cabaret, which is meant to have a door to escape the dungeon. But all of that is very sketchy, and we're not completely sure what will be safe and what won't be. So they are meant to be more safe than the crawlers that remain. But given what happened at the end, where Louis, Brittany and Chris turned out to have gone instead to Sheol, and that they still will be fighting when they thought their fighting was over, shows that it might not be as cut and dry as we thought. This series is also famous for its humour, whether you like it or not. But for me, there was one standout moment. It was incredibly visual as well, and that was when Carl and Princess Donut were on stage doing karaoke, doing a duet, and a fight broke out, and they had to do this fight while singing. I could just picture it so clearly, and if there's ever a TV show or film based on this series of books, I could imagine exactly how it would have looked. And in the audiobook, we had bits of the song coming in as well, which I don't usually like in books. I don't like graphic audio or dramatized audio or extra sounds in there. I just like the text of the narration. But it was just a short amount of time, and it worked so well, and it just made it so much more humorous, and you were just so in that moment. You were right there with them. And in my previous review, I had predicted something about the residuals being the remnants of the primal race. And spoiler alert, I was right to an extent. I think I would have needed to take notes to fully take in and digest and process all that we learned. It seems quite convoluted and complex, all the things that are going on, and it wasn't laid out all that clearly, and I've got to go back in my brain to get it all straight. At the beginning of this series, what happened within the game and what was happening outside of the game were very separate, but now the game is leaking out into the wider world and having very real effects and consequences, and the two are much more inextricably linked than we thought. So we learn that the primal race, which was the original civilization that populated all the universe, they had spread out so much that they were consuming too many resources, and they decided that they were going to ascend from their physical form and put their consciousnesses into this collected holder. But in the end, all of the primal race did not want to do that, and this resistance group led by the apothecary was then very much set against the rest and the eulogist. And the eulogist is this aggregated intellect of the primal race. So AI doesn't stand for artificial intelligence in this case, it stands for the aggregated intellects. And all the AI on the seeded planets, including the Earth, the AIs that run the Dungeon Crawler games, when those planets come to be mined and their populations murdered, those AIs are just little scoops from that one aggregated consciousness of all the primal race. So the AI that we are dealing with in this game on the Earth, this Dungeon Crawler game, where all the remaining humans are trying to stay alive, this AI, it isn't the consciousness of one single person of the primal race, it's just a scoop from that mass consciousness, from all their aggregated intellects. So it's not not a full person, which is why it is so unstable and unhinged. The part of this book that I most enjoyed was at the end, where we got to find out all that information. I find that really exciting, but that meant you did have to get through all the rest of the in-game stuff, the video game parts, and this level consisted of many heats of racers in vehicles and mounts racing against each other, which was fine, but it wasn't the best book of the series in that sense. But I still really enjoyed it, and there were fun little Easter eggs and bits to enjoy all the way through, and the relationship between the characters, and some bits which really pulled on the heartstrings when they were having to separate in the casino and go their separate ways, with some needing to go into stasis and some trying to escape via the Pineapple Cabaret, because there was no other option, because they would have been put up in competition with each other and only one could get through in each heat. So the others would have died, so that some had to go. But it was really worth it for that ending, for the parade of horribles, those floats that they designed. I loved that bit on the 11th floor. Those floats that the crawlers had to design to represent 5 things: resolution, decision, betrayal, destruction, and vengeance. All the while, the AI narrated what all that meant for him and the primal race and the AI itself. So that was my favourite bit, finding out all of that and this very real danger that was hanging over them in that moment. And we got some really meaningful things about revenge and vengeance in Carl's speech, but we don't know how much of that was for show, because then he showed mercy when it came to that outside tourist within the Scolopendra. He wasn't going to let it suffer, even though he thought it probably deserved it. But that's not who he wanted to be, and he said he had to keep reminding himself of that. So this book was great fun, and now it's going to be a very long wait until the next one, and there are so many more questions now and mysteries that I want to know the answers to right now. When the historian was describing in the past, there was one of the eulogist's own kind to stop it and temper it so that the whole universe wasn't destroyed, that all life wasn't destroyed. I'm really worried that history is repeating itself again, and the AI is now in the same position as the eulogist was, and will try and destroy all life maybe, and that Carl, who is one of the primal race because he chose that race, and will Carl have to sacrifice his life in order to temper that decision so that all life in the universe isn't destroyed, and will that be Carl's ultimate fate?